Alrighty, welcome back to Becoming the Remnant, and welcome back to you. This is not your first time, but this is Laura Mayer, everybody, if you have not been paying attention, but I think we introduced you last time. Is there any major life updates you want to share? Any new exciting things going on?
That's still my name.
Still your name?
I'm still doing all those things, so...
Okay, awesome. Well, I had it on my heart to have you on to talk about church hurt, because I know that is a big part of your testimony, and honestly, I think that's something that a lot of people are confused about.
Yeah.
You know, what is it? If it does occur, how do you walk through it? What it is, what it isn't. So, where do you want to start? I know there's a lot. There's so many different angles and different...
Yeah. Well, I was really excited when you said what today's topic was going to be, which is kind of a strange thing to be excited about. I love talking about hard things. I love talking about church hurt. I love talking about unforgiveness.
Like, give me the most difficult.
Let's do those because I love to see people walk in freedom.
Amen.
And so church hurt is one of those things that we are going to give some definition to some stuff because it's one of those things that people just kind of slap that phrase on a lot of different things. It's kind of like the word trauma. Somebody who lives through a tornado, we have a lot of those around here in North Alabama, that's traumatic. So is going to a war zone. That is traumatic. Yeah. So is growing up in an abusive home. That is traumatic. But those are all different types of events, and maybe the path of healing for each of those is a little different. But we can get confused when a word is used a lot. And so we definitely want to put some definition to some of it. But I want to start off by saying I see church hurt in all of its degrees as being something that the devil uses to try to derail people from their own walk with God. And it's almost like people will get shipwrecked on that island of church hurt, and they don't know how to get off the island. So that's why I was really excited when you said what the title was, because I don't want to see people shipwrecked.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, too, it's important to kind of define what is real church hurt and what's not, because a lot of people, there will be a disagreement or whatever, which is going to happen, when you get more than one imperfect person in a place. As soon as there's two people in a place, there's now room for disagreement. And so I think a lot of people will kind of like maybe have a disagreement with somebody at church, or even with leadership, especially, with leadership, and then they'll claim church hurt and now I have to unplug from everything. So I think it's kind of important for us to define, when to stick and stay, and when, you need to seek the Lord if you should go, or all that. All that too.
So you said people run away. We each have kind of a way that we have survived this far in life. When things get hard, and whether you call them trauma responses or whatever, I just call them your survival skills, because it really is a skill-based thing. Maybe because, like as a child, if things felt really out of control, your way of handling that may have been just to go hide in your room.
Yeah.
Well, based on the skills that you had, that was the best tool you had to be able, that you had to use. But in order to heal, you have to continue to learn new skills, new survival skills, so that you can move from surviving to thriving. And so just running away might be the fix in some cases. Like if a bear is chasing you. Actually, I don't know. Maybe that's not. There's rules of like if bears are chasing you.
Like growl and make yourself big, but I feel like that.
I don't feel like the bear would be intimidated if I growled at him.
I'm like 5'3.5", and like I think if I was like, the bear would be like, "That's cute." But anyways, so maybe running away. I don't know. I would just pray and be like, "Hey Lord, I think I'm about to come see you. I'm sorry." It's a little early.
Leave the light on. I'm on my way. No. Okay, so in some instances in life, running might be the right way to survive. But a lot of times in relationships, that's not. So it's funny you said like different types of church hurt. When I was preparing for this, the Lord showed me 3 different levels of church hurt.
Thank you, Holy Spirit.
I know. And so like I don't know. I've not searched the internet for this. This is just like this is what he showed me, and this is what really made sense in my heart. So let me just dive into that. Okay. So with all of these, all but the last one, which would just be 2, the first 2 are based on the root of it is a question of who your source is. So whenever there's a fruit, there's a root. So whenever there's a fruit of something going on in your life, there's a root underneath it that's actually the cure and actually your answer.
Okay.
And so God wants to always help you get underneath the surface. It's never about what it looks like it's about, ever. So that first level would be hurt feelings. Let's say you feel overlooked in your church. Let's say somebody forgot to send you a birthday card. Maybe your church sends out birthday cards and they remembered everybody else but you. Okay, so there's wounding there, and it's probably attached to some other wounds that are already in your heart. You know, if there's already, if rejection is something that you struggle with, the devil is going to take every little misunderstanding that happens in your life and frame it through the lens of rejection. So instead of believing the best, I love what your mom says about believe the best until proven otherwise. Instead of just believing the best because the church did not mail you a birthday card, that maybe it got lost in the mail. The mail's not super reliable sometimes.
Listen, I'm going to a baby shower today, and my gift got lost in the mail, so I'm very
okay.
I had to tell my friend last night. I'm like, when I show up empty-handed tomorrow, it's not on purpose. So
I love
the mail.
Like,
the mail is not.
The mail is not
reliable.
Or what if they just had your address wrong in the system? Or what if humans are the ones in charge of mailing out birthday cards, and so they make mistakes? And so there's a lot of reasons why it could have happened, but because we all kind of have one big lie that the devil continually tries to run a thread in our lives about. And if yours is rejection, then when you don't get a birthday card, the enemy immediately is going to say they intentionally left you out.
Yeah.
You're not loved. You've been rejected. You don't matter. That's what people do when they get text messages, and they immediately think the person is mad at them because, you know, with text messaging, unless you just use lots of emojis, you're going to read it through whatever lens you read all of your life.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be defensive or whatever. So I think there's a space for a lot of that happens in church. And it's nothing that just a good conversation can't clear up.
Yeah.
And I think if people would approach those conversations with questions rather than statements, instead of saying, you know, you forgot that birthday card. I don't know why that's my example. I have no idea.
Maybe somebody didn't get a birthday card.
I don't know.
And they're just feeling sad.
It seems benign enough, but yet can hold a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Statements or
questions instead of statements.
Yeah. So instead of saying, you know, you didn't remember my birthday card, and I know it's because I don't matter to you, and it's about time I start getting some love around here or whatever. Instead, approach it with curiosity. And this is a good tip for any kind of confrontation in your life. Approach it with curiosity and ask questions and say, hey, I noticed I didn't get a birthday card. What's that about? Or what do you think happened? Because you may be surprised, but they may go, oh my gosh, are you serious? Let me, you know.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 types of people in that situation. There's one, and maybe there's more than 2, but there's 2 that I'm thinking of right now. There's one that like will play things up in their own mind and then avoid the conversation, and they've just like already had both sides of the conversation in their head, and it's so much easier to do that instead of just like go have the conversation. So then they like don't come to church for 3 months because they're offended or because they've made all this up in their mind, and it's definitely because they and then see they looked at me
they
funny,
play judge and jury in their
so
head.
That seals it, and I'm not going back. Or then it's the other person who does have the conversation and comes at it defensive and is like, well, you
making statements.
And in both ways, like they've already been judge, jury, and executioner.
You
know, in the conversation, whether but at least the person who is having the conversation is at least allowing the other person to be like, whoa, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah. So that still counts as church hurt, though.
Yeah.
Because you're still hurting.
Yeah.
I'm going to say all hurt is real hurt, because you still are feeling pain over it. But the answer for that is to remember who your source is and ask yourself, is there something that I'm trying to get from them to heal something in me?
Yeah.
Because if you got super offended or hurt about something, it's because they hit a bruise that already existed before they did that thing.
Yeah. I think, though, too, that makes me think of, I was telling somebody, it's been like a year ago now, I think, I don't even remember, but we were dealing with something in a friendship, and I was like, I can be really honest with this person, and I was like, hey, I've noticed that anytime you have a disagreement with anybody, the devil always in your mind is like, it's this.
Yeah.
And I was like, so this is a sore spot for you.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity now to take that in front of the Lord and be like, Lord, we need to
heal this
sore spot fixed. Because if you always if the devil knows that this is your sore spot, he will poke at it. That is all he's going to do morning, noon, and night is poke at it. And so I feel like there's a level of maturity, and it's not going to be easy because it's a sore spot for a reason. It's sore, but
there's a story there.
Yeah, if you know that, okay, every time something comes, the devil reframes it as rejection or whatever the case may be, or I'm misunderstood, or that's a sign. Okay, I've got something that I have to take to the Lord.
Yes,
and we've got to get this fixed.
Yes. So that's a really great point. So if you find yourself feeling hurt, feeling rejected, and it's attached with church, go to the Lord and say, number one, I'm going to believe the best about this person until I'm proven otherwise, but I'm not going to shame myself and just slap the word offense on it, because a lot of what we say, they got offended, that almost kind of invalidates their experience. And it's like, because it's saying that they got upset about something that really is not a big deal. Well, to you, it's not.
Yeah.
But actually, how about we start reframing that and helping them heal in that area where there was already a wound. People that are highly offendable are very wounded people.
Yeah, it's true.
And God wants healing for them. And so instead of just taking the attitude of, well, they just need to get over it, that might be a true statement, but it's poor timing.
Yeah.
I've sat in services before, or listened to podcast episodes, or read books where people just kind of take the approach of get over it is the magic wand answer for every problem in your life. And that's not true. Anybody that's given you advice, it's because that's the advice they tell themselves, and that's how they have survived to this point.
Yeah.
Maybe that person is super avoidant, and so it looks like they're real strong and spiritual by just being able to get over everything, when actually they're avoidant of emotional content, and they never want to go up underneath the surface and figure out what's going on in them. So that's the advice they give you.
Yeah.
Just ignore. Well, that's not going to help anybody. So I don't think that's always the answer. You should just get over it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm learning that if that is somebody's go-to advice and they tell everybody, just don't get stuck there, or, whatever, they're actually really uncomfortable with the other person's emotional content and emotional experience. And so they want them to quit crying because they don't know what to do with a crying person, because they don't even know what to do with themselves when they're crying.
Yeah.
And it's so much more helpful to sit in that space and listen to their story.
Yeah.
It's not going to, it's so much better. And listen to the story and help be a part of the healing. Okay, so kind of the first level of church hurt is that when you're hurt, your feelings are hurt. Maybe the person didn't mean to do anything, but maybe it was just a complete oversight, and maybe it was irresponsibility on their part. They're human. And so either you're going to do one of two things. You're going to internalize it, which is what we've been talking about, or you're going to externalize. So either you're going to blame yourself, and the enemy is just going to eat your lunch with all of this self-deprecating thoughts and whatever, or you're going to externalize and blame them. You're going to start fault finding. You're going to start saying what's wrong with everybody else, and that's when you do move over into offense, and that's a really dangerous place. But the answer for both is remembering who your source is.
Yeah.
That even if they do reject you, you're not rejected. Because you're a child of the Most High.
Yeah,
your
amen.
identity is rooted in what God says about you and your position in Him. So even if somebody else doesn't recognize that, that's on them. It's
Right.
not a reflection on you.
Absolutely.
Also, kind of an offshoot of this first level of church hurt is people who are feeling slighted and overlooked, but they kind of move more into a space of, hey, I have these giftings, I have this call, why am I not being recognized? Why don't I have a place? And they get offended. And so that also comes down to a source issue.
Yeah.
Of probably they are looking to their church leadership to be the one to put them in a place that only God can put them.
Exactly.
And it's still that question of, won't you recognize me? Won't you see me? So there's still a wound there that you need to get healed, because when God puts you in a place, no man can take you out of it. And I mean, I will go ahead and say I have been aware of situations before where maybe you don't have just an oblivious person in leadership or somebody that didn't know they were hurting you. Maybe they're an awesome person. You know, you're just wounded, and so they unknowingly hit a bruise. But maybe there is somebody in leadership who they are maybe possessive, or they don't. It's their show. It's their circus. And I thought about that, whoever that person might be who's listening to this, who is in a situation where their heart is right before the Lord, and they really are in like a holding pattern, and somebody is undermining them, because just because somebody's in church leadership does not mean they are full of the fruit of the Spirit.
Right. Yeah.
And you feel like that person is almost a blockade to you stepping into what God has called you to do. Even if there's just one person listening and that fits you, I want you to know that you work for God's kingdom, not your pastor's kingdom.
Yeah.
And God will only allow space for that for so long before He supernaturally picks you up and moves you into a place where you can follow Him, because ultimately it's not about building your church, it's about building His church. So even if your heart is in the right place and you still feel you're in this frustrating season, because, I mean, you've actually had people undermine and cut you off and all this stuff, you work for God.
Yeah.
So He can handle that.
He's not going to let you stay somewhere where they're not willing to let you be developed, or, if your heart is right and you really have a call, he's going to take you somewhere where they're going to actually train you and let you do.
So again, it's a source issue.
Yeah.
God's your source.
Absolutely.
Man is not. So even in this situation, God is your source for launching you into whatever area of ministry you're called to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. God will override the system, Okay. And then, so that first one is more just that level of, there's real pain there. There's real church hurt, but it's hidden bruises that are already in you, and God wants to heal those. And whether that person meant to do it or didn't mean to do it, if you will connect to God as your source for your healing, your place of belonging, the one who sets you in whatever path you're supposed to be in, you are going to be okay. You do not have to look to people to be your supplier of any of those things. Those are things that God supplies. Okay, but then we have the category of actual like church abuse.
Yeah.
And that is not church hurt. Church hurt is more like an issue with like interpersonal issues. Yeah. Church abuse is where the word abuse means misuse. And where pastors are called to protect the sheep, to lay down their lives for the sheep the way that Jesus did.
Yeah.
It's still very much that, like, husbands, lay your life down for your wife. It's that same concept, and not all pastors do that.
Yeah. There are some translations that use the word husbandman in the Bible. So
Oh, that's
I mean,
right.
it really
Yeah.
is, yeah.
It's the same. And so a good shepherd protects his sheep. And maybe you're in a situation, or you've been in a situation, where instead of protecting you, your pastor abused you, misused you, because he was building his own kingdom. And the tools he used were control and manipulation and domination and coercion. And you've continued to go. I know that's a big part of my story.
Yeah.
Continuing to go back to the Lord and saying, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I was told that I just wasn't submissive enough, that I should submit more. Because with abusers, it's always about power and control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with an abusive person, when you go to them and you're trying to work something out and figure out where the disconnect was, and, take ownership for your part, and you're hoping they're going to take ownership for their part, the answer is always turned back on you. And it's, really, you need to give me more power over you. And that would clear this up. And it's funny because now that I'm in my 40s, I can look back to my young 20s. And every time I was told that I needed to submit more, or told that I was a bad sheep, or things of that nature, really it was this person saying, I want even more power over you. And so that's abuse.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is.
A shepherd is, we don't shepherd people by taking their power away. We don't shepherd people by stepping over boundaries and managing them as people, controlling the decisions they make in their lives. We shepherd people, and this is true about husbands. You lead your family by example.
Yeah.
You shepherd your family by example. You shepherd your church by example. You lead your church by example. So it's not about power and control. It's you going first, and the sheep will follow.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I've talked a whole lot.
No, it's good. It's
Okay.
all been so good, though.
Is there anything else you want to jump in?
No, I think, too, I mean, it definitely is, like, a red flag if, like, you're going to your pastor with something and they're like, well, if I could have made this decision for you, I would have told you to I mean, because obviously, like, they're there to give you good advice, but ultimately, like, they can't make your decisions for you.
Yes.
You have to, their whole job is to build you up so that you can make decisions. I mean, they can counsel you through things, obviously, but I mean, they can't, like, I don't know. So I think just to, like, we're talking about, keeping that awareness of, like, is this, okay? And obviously, and pray for your pastor too,
Sure.
if you think that their heart is right, they're just maybe struggling with, because not everybody, I have to be careful. Not everybody is, naturally a gifted leader. A lot of times that they're learning how to walk in their call themselves. A lot of times for a lot of people, all of their leadership skills are grace. They don't naturally have a lot of, so they may be stumbling through and trying to figure it out. And there are some people, there are some people even in the ministry that genuinely don't have a good heart, and we need to be aware of that too. But there are people too that do have a good heart. They're just still figuring out how to lead, maybe. And they're just, so just pray for them. Okay, Lord, I need you to, this is a little concerning. And so I need you to help them and reveal yourself to them. And I think a lot of times it's so easy for us to take those things to other people, but just, stepping back and taking that to prayer. And then if the Lord tells you to, draw back or go somewhere else, then you do. But I mean, just, that, I don't know.
Yes, that's so good. A big thing, I'm so glad you brought that up. Leaders are humans too.
Absolutely.
Leaders are also learning as they go.
Absolutely.
Sheep should not be practiced, but you are still learning at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, but there are some markers you can look for in a healthy person. A healthy person takes ownership of their part.
Yeah.
A healthy person is not blame shifting. And so just because you're a pastor or a leader in the church does not mean that you are now not still held to the standard of being a healthy human, healthy person.
Absolutely.
A healthy leader.
And even more so, I think we
more
need
so.
to strive to be,
you're held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
So, so yes, pray for your pastor. But if you're picking or leader or person in the church, the thing you're looking for though are patterns. Mm-hmm. It's different if there's like a one-off situation. Yeah. Pray for them. They're learning. Go to them. Matthew talks about that, about if your brother has aught against you, how to go to them and then try to resolve it, just the two of you. And if it doesn't resolve, then bring somebody and then go before the church. That does not apply to all situations. I'm going to get around to that for a second because this has been twisted. I've heard this even twisted.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. I'll just go and say it now. In cases of abuse, you do not go to the abuser and confront them first. Cases of like child abuse, physical abuse. No. You go to 911.
Right.
You go straight to the authorities on things like that. Matthew does not apply here. And abusers love to, I have heard of abusers taking this and twisting it. And you hear of ministers, in the news and how leadership in the church hid the crime that the pastor did, and they hide the crime by saying, well, first that victim should have gone directly to the pastor. It's like, please don't abuse me. I really just don't like it when you do that.
Yeah,
No, that's not how that works.
No.
Or go to leadership, the board that, no, that like, if it's breaking a law, you go to the law. Mm-hmm. That's your first stop. Okay. Hope that helps somebody.
Yeah.
But in healthy people, you look for those who point to Jesus.
Yeah.
If a leader is pointing to themselves all the time, red flag. They're pointing you to Jesus. They are striving to be like Jesus. Sure, they make mistakes, but if it's a pattern of constantly running over people, saying hurtful, harmful things, even when you've gone to them, it's just still a pattern.
Yeah.
Those are red flags of an unhealthy leader. So a couple of, I don't know, this has come back a couple of times. So sometimes when you're in the middle of abuse, you don't even, not sometimes, every time, you don't recognize what's happening. Because it's like, that old idiom about like boiling a frog. I don't know who actually boils frogs, but like...
I hope nobody. I love frogs. That makes me sad.
But that if a frog is in a pot and you just turn the heat up little by little by little...
Yeah, they don't notice.
They don't notice. So that's how abusers work. Mm-hmm. And the first thing they go after is your own intuition and your ability to sense what's true and right. Mm-hmm. And I know in my case that was what it was. I felt like the frog who got boiled very slowly.
Yeah.
And this person would say things to undermine my trust in what I was picking up, in my own intuition, to the point that I was actually told that I could not hear from God for myself, that I needed to go through them, that God would talk to them because they were my leader, and they would pass on and tell me what God had said.
No. Immediately no.
Now, if they had started off with that statement at the very beginning of the relationship, I would have, like, oh, they don't start off that way. Mm-hmm. It was little by little undermining my ability. And so that by the time they tried to sell me that big lie, it made sense.
Yeah.
I'd gotten to a place so much of doubting that I could even hear from God. That just made total sense, that I just needed to be so submissive to whatever they told me was right. Okay, and then kind of the last one is church abuse, but at such a sinister level, like where you hear about pastors sexually abusing children or youth pastors and things like that. And so this kind of abuse comes out of nowhere. Oftentimes, they are people that everybody completely trusts.
Yeah.
They're not exhibiting patterns, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere. but you have still been so damaged. Your family has been so damaged. I have a dear friend whose elementary daughter was abused by the children's pastor for years.
Ugh.
And when it finally came to light, it shook everybody. And this person was convicted and is going to be spending the rest of their life in jail. But to this family, it's still at the root of it, as they're healing, it comes back to knowing who their source is.
Yeah.
Because going back to how the devil wants to use church hurt and church abuse to shipwreck your lives, talk about that.
Yeah. I
Like
can imagine.
when someone has been so trusted and they violated your child, in your family, in the most horrible way,
Yeah.
don't lump them up with God.
Yeah.
Man is not your source. Follow through. God is a God of justice.
Absolutely.
Call the law. Pray for them in orange.
Mm-hmm.
But move your family to safety. And if the church has condoned it and protected it, move.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Just get as far, as my mom would say, get as far out of Dodge as possible.
It gets very cult-like
Yeah. No, I imagine.
when people are more loyal to preserving the church and the pastor than they are on the side of protecting the victim
Yeah.
and justice and following the law.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, as I'm a mental health coach, and one of my clients is actually a cult survivor,
Wow.
like a legit cult.
Wow.
And there's a lot of undoing that has to happen because you start being a part of that kind of abuse or that kind of legalistic, cultish environment. You start worshiping the leadership more than you're worshiping God.
Yeah.
And that jumps me back to my own testimony. So God was so gracious, and he rescued me out of that. And there had to be a time away from it
Yeah.
for me to be able to see it for what it was. I could not learn the skills I needed while staying in it. Somebody needs to hear that.
Yeah.
Some of you just keep trying to stay in it, thinking you're going to fix it and make it better, and that's part of the lie that the enemy is using to keep you in bondage to it. If you had the power to fix it, you would have already. If you had the ability to influence that, you would have already.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like abusive situations.
Yeah.
So God rescued me out of it and gave me a number of years where he was restoring me. The first thing he had to do is restore how I thought he thought about me. Because how this leader portrayed God, I'd started to believe. And so God had to say, don't let anybody speak for me ever again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And God restored that. But then there was a season where I had to come face to face again with this person. And they were actually kind of semi a part of my circle. Not my circle. I will not give them that.
Your sphere of
People I might run into periodically.
an acquaintance. Yeah.
There you go. And that's when the Lord started teaching me the skills to go with it. And the skills were rooted in boundaries.
Yeah.
He taught me a whole lot about power and control in that season, and about how people can have real power over you, like physical, like they have a gun pointed at you,
Yeah.
or they can have perceived power, and that most abuse is rooted in them having perceived power. They convince you that they're powerful in your life. They convince you that they're the answer to those wounds. They convince you that they're your source. It goes back to that source issue.
Yeah.
So it's power and control. And God started teaching me a whole lot about that, teaching me a lot about boundaries, my right to use my power, to not give that away just because somebody wanted it.
Yeah.
That I could say no, and no is a holy word.
Yeah.
And so I grew so much, I healed so much, and this was over the span of a couple of decades. And then there was one particular day where I saw this person and I had been around them and I'd been fine, like around, not in connection, because not everybody, forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing.
Absolutely. Amen.
And I had forgiven, but I will never reconcile because they're not a safe person.
Right.
They have a pattern in their life of not being safe, and I only allow safe people in my life.
Right.
So, that doesn't make you judgy. That actually makes you scriptural.
Yeah.
Above all else, guard your heart. Okay, so I had to see this person again. And walking away, I crumbled. I started sobbing. It was so triggering. And in that moment, as I'm crying, I'm like, what is wrong with me, God? I thought that I've been healing so much. And I've been around him before and it didn't bother me. What is going on? Up until this point, the Lord had been so tender in my healing journey. And this time he got firm, like a good father. And my question to him was, why? Why did and does this person have so much rent-free space in my brain? And this is what God said. He said, Laura, this is what happens when you put another man above me.
Oof.
Never let it happen again.
Oof. Oh, that's so good.
It was power.
Yeah.
It was who I saw as my source. And I realized this person had been able to ooch into my life. He'd been able to start turning up the pot.
Yeah, slowly.
Because I was looking to him. My heart was open to him to heal some wounds.
Yeah.
To supply me in some way with something I needed.
Yeah.
It was a source issue. I'd let him be my source in some things. And he had ill motives because the thing he thrived on was power. And you feel really powerful when somebody looks to you as their source.
Yeah.
That is a position only reserved for God.
Yeah. I think it's too important as, someone who is in leadership too, to guard ourselves against
talk about that.
Even you'll notice me and I, if I slip up once or twice, don't nobody be like, you didn't say it. But even when somebody, compliments me on my singing or my preaching or your podcast was good, I'll immediately do my best to say, oh, praise God. Because that's more for me than it is for you.
Sure.
Because I need to remind myself that, without him, I'm nothing. Without him, I can't get up here and preach. Without him, I can't get up here and sing. And so I think we, even on the other side of that can be such a temptation for those of us who are in leadership to, oh, these people are looking to me like me. It has to come from me. What am I going to do? I've got to lead them to the Lord. And, even I think the devil can use that to slowly turn the pot up on those in leadership.
Oh, that's good.
We just slowly, it's more about me. What am I going to do? I've got to. And then suddenly, as a leader, you can find yourself in an unhealthy situation. So I think, too, it's important as those of us who are in leadership to, we have to guard our hearts too, to make sure that we don't turn into the kind of leader that you're talking about. Because are there people who are just nasty from the jump and whatever? Absolutely there are. But I think a lot of people, I even think of, I had family, not immediate family, but extended family in the Jim Jones, or almost in the Jim Jones cult.
Oh my word.
It was my mom's.
Google it if you don't know what that is.
Yeah. Because we don't.
Or don't.
Maybe don't actually, but it was my mom's grandma, so it would have been my great grandma, and then I think it was my mom's aunt. Because he moved to a different state with the church, and they moved with him at one point, and then because he was so good, he was actually one of the first people with a racially integrated church. Wow. And so I think, and my mom talks about it, that he got to the place where because he took so much flack for that, he started thinking oh, I'm the only one that knows.
It's a source issue. Yeah. Leaders start seeing themselves as the source for the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was just, my point in bringing up this story is it was just slowly, little by little, that the devil was able to, convince him, oh, you're the only one that knows right. You're the only one that knows right. And he got up one day and he held up the Bible and said, basically, I'm beyond this paper idol, I think is the exact quote that my mom says. And so my great-grandma, that was the final straw for her. She said, bye-bye.
He just called Jesus a paper idol because Jesus is the Word made flesh.
And so they moved back to Indiana away from all that. And thank God, because, I mean, it was within a year that they were in Guyana. So praise God that they got out. But I say all that to say, you know, we as leaders, too, have to guard ourselves against, because the devil would love for leaders to completely get off, too.
Because it preys on wounds in the leader's life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all these people are all of a sudden coming to them, and you're so amazing, and you're awesome, and you changed my life, and I love your podcast, and I love all your stuff. And then because we all have to take our wounds and broken places to the Lord, that feels so good, and it scratches an itch for us, or it fills a void where we felt opposite of those things, and we start seeing ourselves as their source. You know, and sometimes people, you can be a leader who has your heart pure, and you are constantly, you know, pointing people to Jesus, and there are people that the Lord will bring around your ministry that, because they are so broken and they are so wounded, they almost like latch on and like almost they're the ones trying to suck everything from you. They see you as their source, even if you do not see yourself as their source. Be very, very cautious.
Absolutely.
In those kinds of situations.
Absolutely.
And make sure you keep witnesses around you, and make sure you don't cross any lines of encouraging that behavior. So not, you know, depends on how big your ministry is. You may or may not have your personal cell phone out there, but, you know, where they're just constantly, they think that you should be at their constant
beck and call.
Yeah. And when they do come to you and ask advice on stuff, don't give answers, ask questions. Because you're wanting to empower them. They are someone who truly feels very powerless in their lives, and they see you and you feel like an answer to them. And so they just offload their power to you and be like, here, you be powerful for me. Tell me what to do. And, you know, all this stuff. As a good leader, you need to empower them. So you do that by asking questions and saying, well, have you prayed about it? What do you feel the Lord would have you do on that? You know, your situation's unique than mine. And so you're building them up, and you're teaching them that they can go to the Father for themselves. And I mean, if they have a scriptural question, you can teach, you can shine light on that, but be very cautious that you don't just start saying, well, yeah, you should totally take that job. You should totally date that guy. And you should, don't get into that.
No.
Empower them to make God their source. It truly, abuse and church hurt are rooted in who your source is. So, and sometimes, like in the case of my friend where her daughter was abused, that's not. But the healing of that is. Like, the abuse didn't happen because they were out of balance in who they viewed as their source. You know, they didn't put that pastor he was in a trusted place, you know. But in order for them to heal from that, their eyes cannot be on the church to be the one to heal them. It's got to be on God.
Absolutely. So one thing I wanted to talk about too is, like, because I saw, do you know who Abby Gamboa is?
Yes.
She was at an event or talking about something, and she was talking about how, you know, a lot of people, like, when they get into the first stage of, you know, what you were talking about of church hurt, where, you know, it is just something interpersonal misunderstanding, they're so tempted to run, you know, in that moment. But she was talking about, you know, when that happens, like, if you don't have a word from the Lord saying to leave, like, it, you know, this is still your house. This is where your mail is coming to. And so I kind of wanted us to talk about that for a little bit, maybe how to handle that situation, you know, and not run. Obviously, if you're being actually abused, like we've talked about, please get out of there. Please, you know, do what you need to do to get to safety. That's not all what we're talking about, but we're just talking about, like, interpersonal offenses that come up, because I feel like
rejections, hurt feelings.
I feel like too, we're dealing with a generation who has seen even, a lot of church leadership or just people who go to church be hypocritical. And so that has, turned into church hurt for them. Like, or they've just seen, us be not kind to each other, other believers. And so I guess we're just trying to get a generation out of that and into, how do we deal with this healthily instead of running away. So I kind of wanted to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So if God has put you in a place, there's a lot of reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And some places he'll have you for a short season. Other places are long term. Some places are forever.
Yeah.
And even if it's a seasonal thing, sometimes seasons change not because something's wrong, but because something's right.
Yeah.
And he's moving you. Mm-hmm. You did what, because remember, we're a part of his kingdom. We're building his kingdom. We're not building man's kingdom, ours, or leaderships or churches or anything like that. But the enemy does try to get you out of your spot.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the source issue.
Mm-hmm.
So in my own life, I have had opportunity to get out of my spot. And each time going before the Lord, because he's my source, he's who I take orders from.
Yeah.
I don't take orders from how I feel about something. How I feel about it informs me. We talked about that on our last episode. Emotions are information.
Absolutely.
But it's like the light that goes off on the front of the dash of your car. But you take your car to the shop and say, hey, there's a light on.
Yeah.
And so when I have feelings and emotions about something, I take myself into the shop, the presence of God, and say, okay, what do I need to do about this?
Yeah.
And I refuse to be moved out of my spot until the Lord tells me that I have a different spot.
Yeah.
You almost have to get bulldogged about it at times because the enemy will give you legit opportunity.
No, absolutely.
And sometimes it's not even hurt that you made up in your own head. Sometimes it's not just the devil whispering. Sometimes somebody was terrible.
Yeah.
And the Lord says, stay put.
Yeah.
And because he's your source, he's going to show you how to stay put.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to give you the steps to take. Maybe there is somebody that you're going to be a little more distanced from because they're not as...
I was just about to say, not everybody has to be your best friend. So
that's a whole sermon.
I think, too, we get so, we do have to get along with them, because there are people, I'm just going to be honest, I have led worship with people who have abused me. Now it's nobody that here. They've not been here in a long time, but and we worked it out and everything that needed to happen happened and everything was fine. Yeah. And it was not actively happening when we were leading worship together, but it was, a situation that happened when we were teenagers. And then, later in life, the Lord had me and I think it was healing for me in that, honestly, to you can do, but I still say you do not have to be somebody's best friend. You just have to get to the point where, I'm working on this with Lord, you're working on this with Lord, and we can be in unity and one accord with one another. So that's not, we're not saying that everybody's got to be your bestie and you got to be over at their house every other weekend cutting it up. But, we have to get to a point where we're mature enough that I will not let you destroy the unity. Yes. Whatever we've got to do, whatever level we've got to get to, where that we can be in unity with one another and it not affect, what we're doing, especially if you are, in some form of leadership or leading like that, where other people are depending on you to help get the anointing in the room. Yeah. It can be.
Yeah. That's so good. And it goes back to you will be able to function with them on that team if you are not looking to them to supply something for you.
Yeah.
So that's when people actually have some level of control in your life, is when you need something from them.
Yeah.
So if you are still dealing with a whole lot of insecurities over what they did, or maybe you believe that what they said about you maybe low-key might be true or whatever, you need to get all of that handled between you and the Lord. so that when you're around them, his love can flow out of you.
Absolutely.
Instead of you being around them and being empty.
Mm-hmm.
And still looking for them to pour into you in some way, and they're not doing it, or they're not whatever, and so there's this animosity and bitterness still there between the two of you. But when you're not looking to somebody to give you anything, then how they behave or don't behave quits being personal, and instead it's just a reflection on them of who they are. You know, how somebody treats you is not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them.
Yeah, it's true.
So it is making God your source. And so, yes, in ministry, serving with people, being peers, we are supposed to carry one another's burdens. And there is so much. I'm a big fan of community, because Scripture is a big fan of community, and we need each other. But if there is someone that has shown, you know, a level of irresponsibility in your life or whatever, then that does inform, it should inform the level of intimacy that you guys are able to have.
Right, absolutely.
Those things are earned. And so people need to earn their way into the closer parts of your heart, and they can earn their way out too. And people ebb and flow, and it's not a punishment. It's good boundaries. And then God will surround you with people who are safe people, not perfect people, but people who take ownership, people who respect your no, people who push you to be better, who will call you out when you are acting a fool. Those are safe people.
Absolutely. All right. Do you have anywhere else we need to go?
I don't think so. Well, yeah, I do. Of course I do. Of course I have something I want to say, because I'm a talker. So I just want to apologize to anybody. I want to apologize on behalf of those that did hurt you. For the people that completely invalidated your pain, who slapped a bunch of spiritual words on it and told you were just in unforgiveness or bitterness or offense, when in your heart you know that's not what it was. Because you and God talk. You know that's not what it was. You were trying to make sense of what was happening to you and find equilibrium in such an imbalance of power. But I want to encourage you to move forward with God. Not get over it in the sense of on your own, forge out and don't let it bother you. No. Pull in closer to God than you ever have before.
Yeah.
Let Him renew your mind on His view of you and on your view of Him. Because when the enemy attacks, that's what he attacks every single time. Every attack in your life comes down to he's attacking your view of yourself or your view of God, your own character or God's character. Because if he can erode one of those two or both, then he can have a heyday. So don't let them be a reflection of him. Fall back in love with him. Let him right the wrongs. Let him teach you what boundaries need to be. I don't care what that person's title is. Their title does not entitle them to your power, to your autonomy, any of those things when it comes to abuse. Okay. Your position as a Christian means that you are a person who loves justice because you serve a God of justice. So also don't let anybody pressure you into letting criminals off the hook. I've been in environments like that where, and I call it skewed Christianity. I'm going to copyright that phrase because I say it a lot. Where people are like, well, I know they did this, but I think it would just be more loving, if we just handled this within the church and we don't really, alert the authorities or all of that thing. No. That's not how this goes.
Yeah, no.
You're not being unloving or unchristlike. You are being so godly to be a person who champions justice, because what you do in any other situation is you end up protecting the abuser and reviolating the victim. You put the burden on the victim to be the one to do all the forgiving, all the understanding, all the keep walking into church and acting like it didn't just happen. You strip power from the victim. And even some pastors get confused on that when stuff happens within their church. And I'm really thankful to be here, because that has not been my experience here.
Praise God.
Yeah. Victims are protected. And then when it comes to more that first level of, they're not like an evil monster, but you're still really hurt, and they're just not recognizing maybe a gift or a call in you. Remember, God's your source. He's going to get you where he needs to get you, and listen to him. And if he does move you, move and leave that. However you leave that place will be how you enter the next. So Natalie Runyon says that. The first time I heard her say that, I was like, oh, girl. That's so true. So you still are responsible for you, how you walk in love, and the words you choose to say when you're closing out that season, when God's moving you. Don't stir the pot and then run out.
That's good.
That pot's going to be waiting for you when you get to the other place. Seed time and harvest works and all those things. And then if you're hurt and wounded about something, don't just be avoidant. Don't just pull inward and then, ghost the church. Hopefully you have healthy leadership and you can go to them and share where you're hurt, and they can offer some healing balm. They might be able to explain what they meant, and it's totally different than what you thought they meant.
Yeah.
So believe the best about them.
Yeah.
Until proven otherwise.
True. All right. Well, this has been good. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love coming.
All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.